The bells of the exclusive Santa Monica rooftop restaurant chimed softly as a sleek, impeccably dressed woman entered, her heels clicking against the marble floor. Heads turned as Beverly Mason, a prominent figure in LA's social elite, strutted in with her usual air of authority. Known for her towering blonde hair, flawless designer outfits, and an aura bordering on arrogance, Beverly had a reputation for transforming any entrance into a grand performance. Yet tonight, she would encounter someone unexpected. Someone who would shatter her meticulously crafted image and teach her a lesson in humility she would never forget. Perched atop a high-rise overlooking the glistening Santa Monica coast, the restaurant was a crown jewel of Los Angeles fine dining. With minimalist decor and floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing breathtaking ocean views, it exuded an ambiance of exclusivity that attracted Hollywood's finest socialites and business moguls alike. Here, wealth and power whispered between bites of exquisitely crafted cuisine, where patrons paid as much for the atmosphere as for the food. Beverly inhaled the scent of imported candles and polished wood, a satisfied smirk settling on her lips. This was her world, where every waiter and staff member knew their place, catering to the whims of guests who expected nothing less than perfection. Meanwhile, Keisha Daniels, a young Black woman in her late 20s, gracefully navigated the tables, balancing trays while offering warm smiles. Clad in the restaurant's standard black uniform, her dark, curly hair pulled back into a neat bun, Keisha radiated quiet resilience. Raised in Atlanta, Georgia, she grew up in a family where hard work was paramount. After putting herself through college with scholarships and multiple part-time jobs, Keisha had moved to LA in hopes of carving out a successful career. However, dreams were costly, and a city like Los Angeles rarely offered any mercy. Working at this restaurant was meant to be a temporary stepping stone, yet in this city of glitz and glamour, temporary jobs often stretched into indefinite ones. As Beverly settled into her table by the window, she barely glanced at the menu before dismissively waving her hand toward the bar. Catching the signal, Keisha straightened her posture, brushing off the lingering fatigue from her double shift the previous day, and approached with her usual gentle smile. "Good evening, ma'am. Welcome. Can I start you off with a drink?" she asked politely. Beverly didn't look up. Instead, she scrutinized her manicured nails, then lifted her chin, examining Keisha with a raised brow. "I'll have a glass of your finest Cabernet," she ordered, her tone dripping with entitlement. "And make sure it's cold. I don't care if it's red. I want it chilled." Keisha paused, accustomed to unusual requests, but taken aback by the level of rudeness in Beverly's tone. "Certainly, ma'am. I'll bring that right away," she replied, maintaining her professional demeanor even as the sting of Beverly's words settled in. As she turned to retrieve the wine, Beverly sighed dramatically, loud enough for nearby patrons to hear. "Service these days," she muttered, shaking her head. "I don't understand why it's so hard to find competent people anymore." Beverly's comment, laced with calculated cruelty, caught the attention of several diners nearby. Keisha felt her cheeks flush, but focused on keeping her steps even as she walked away. After nearly a year in the restaurant, she had developed a thick skin, yet encounters like this always left a bitter aftertaste. In the kitchen, Keisha took a few momentary breaths, feeling the weight of Beverly's disdain claw at her self-worth. She recalled her mother's words. "Dignity is something no one can take from you, Keisha. Not unless you let them." Refocusing, she poured the Cabernet with care, placing it on a new tray. When Keisha returned to Beverly's table, she set the glass down gently, hoping to avoid further conflict. However, as Beverly lifted the glass to her lips, her face twisted in mock disgust after taking a sip at room temperature. "I asked for it to be cold. Is it really that hard to follow a simple instruction?" Beverly hissed, her voice raised enough to be heard by those around her. Keisha took a steadying breath, willing herself to remain calm. "I apologize, ma'am. I'll bring you a fresh glass right away," she said. "Oh, don't bother," Beverly retorted dismissively. "I suppose it's too much to expect competence these days." She shot Keisha a pitying smile, as if bestowing her with some cruel, twisted charity. "Let me guess. You probably don't understand the kind of standards people like me have to maintain." Keisha's hands clenched subtly as she held the tray, each word grating against her patience. Although she wanted to reply, to tell Beverly that she understood hard work and that every shift in this restaurant was a step toward her dreams, she held back. People like Beverly didn't care about backstories. They saw only uniforms, perceiving themselves as superior. Just as Keisha opened her mouth to excuse herself, a deep, calm voice from the table behind Beverly interrupted the tense silence. "Excuse me, but did I hear you correctly?" The voice resonated with quiet authority. Beverly froze, her hand halfway to her wine glass, and slowly turned to face the man behind her. Seated at the adjacent table was none other than Douglas Winters, one of Los Angeles' most renowned attorneys. In his 50s, Douglas was tall and broad-shouldered, known for his philanthropic work and commitment to equality. He was a figure Beverly instantly recognized. "Forgive my interruption," he began, a slight edge to his tone, "but I couldn't help overhearing your conversation with this young lady." He nodded toward Keisha, his eyes softening as he looked at her. Beverly's face drained of color as her confident demeanor faltered under Douglas's intense gaze. "Mr. Winters, I didn't realize," she stammered, grasping for words and forcing a tight, nervous smile, clearly rattled by his sudden intervention. Douglas raised an unimpressed eyebrow. "What I heard was condescension," he continued, his voice calm but unyielding. "This young lady," he nodded toward Keisha, "is here working hard to ensure your experience is enjoyable. Yet you've decided she's less than you because of the position she holds." Beverly's cheeks turned a deep shade of red, and her eyes darted around the room as other diners watched with interest. Her attempt to regain composure was met with Douglas's steady, unrelenting gaze. "You know, Miss Mason, respect is a reflection of one's character," he said, his tone pointed yet civil. "People like Keisha here are the backbone of establishments like this. They're the ones who make places like this what they are, and I'd say that's something worth respecting." Keisha felt warmth spread through her chest, a surge of pride and validation lifting her spirits. Here was a man she admired, standing up for her and affirming her worth. She glanced around, noticing approving nods from nearby patrons, their gazes now filled with empathy. Douglas continued, addressing Keisha directly. "Keisha, if you're available after your shift, I'd love to discuss an opportunity with you." A gentle smile spread across his face. "I run an organization that provides scholarships and career placements for dedicated individuals like you. We could use someone with your resilience and dedication." Keisha's heart raced. Tears prickled at the corners of her eyes, but she blinked them away, managing a soft, grateful smile. "Thank you, Mr. Winters," she said, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "I'd be honored." Beverly sat frozen, her mouth opening and closing as she struggled to respond. The tables had turned, and her own cruelty was now exposed for everyone to see. The feeling of powerlessness that settled over her was one she hadn't felt in years. She glanced at Keisha, then at Douglas, and her eyes dropped in shame, realizing she was alone in her disgrace. Douglas looked at Beverly once more, his gaze unwavering. "Respect goes both ways, Miss Mason. It's something we all have to earn, no matter our status." With that, he turned back to Keisha, offering her one last nod of encouragement. The restaurant watched in silence as Keisha returned to the kitchen, her head held high and her heart swelling with gratitude. Her co-workers greeted her with smiles and nods of respect, the weight of the moment settling over them. As Beverly Mason left the restaurant that night, her head bowed. She carried with her the bitter realization that for all her wealth and status, she had missed what truly mattered. That worth isn't found in designer clothes or exclusive addresses, but in the simple dignity of treating others with respect. For Keisha, that night marked a new chapter, one in which she no longer viewed herself as merely a waitress, but as a woman with dreams, ambition, and a newfound belief in her worth. Looking back at the restaurant, her heart brimmed with hope for the future she knew was finally within reach. What would you do if you witnessed this moment? Remember, respect isn't bought with wealth, it's earned through kindness. Share this story if you believe in standing up for what's right, and let it remind us all that true power lies in lifting others up, not tearing them down. Follow Celeb Corner for more eye-opening stories that reveal the real heroes among us, because sometimes the people we overlook have the most to teach us.